It's day 5 of our art classes. You guys, whether this is the first time you're joining us or if you've been following along with this all week, like our friend Daniel has been, shout out to Daniel. Guys, thank you for tuning in and doing some art with us today. Now, today's project is the glue baskets. I like to call it spring glue baskets because it's springtime now. And this is a great project to do during the spring with the flowers coming out, and you can actually go outside in some locations and look at the flowers and get some ideas for what we're going to work on today. Hopefully you guys have been able to get outside a little bit. What have you been doing this week? I know that there's a lot of fun things that you can do outside. The internet is a great resource. Right here, YouTube has all kinds of activities and fun things that you can do. I'm thinking of a few right now. Those are really fun activities. We did those with our boys when they were little, and there's just so many neat things you can do with chalk and sponges, but we're not going to talk about that today. Today we're going to talk about our glue baskets. Now, if you were just now joining us and this is your first video, yesterday's video, episode 4, talks to you about how to actually make the glue basket template or the design. So if you haven't done that yet, you're going to want to do that first. That's going to be something that needs to get done before that you can work on this project. But feel free to look at the project and get the idea if you want. If you do have your glue baskets already finished, then go ahead and grab those. You're going to want that. You're going to want some paintbrushes, or maybe one is fine, water, paper towel, and some markers. Not the permanent markers, but more of your, like your Crayola or your markers that are water-based. So that's what you're going to want today. And a Sharpie. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. You guys ready? Here we go. All right, so let's start with making some flowers. Now, flowers can be made any different way. I like to do mine in interesting shapes. So I'm going to start with a Sharpie so that when I use my water on it later, it's not going to all bleed off. So this is how I like to start. You can do your flowers however you want. I like to make a circle, partial, because it runs into my end of my glue. And then maybe I'm going to outline that circle again, making it loop. And then you just put some designs on it. It's whatever you want to do. With your markers, I like to make my flowers have a little petal. Now, let's add some interest. You can do little things like dots going around to add it however you want to do. Okay, let's move on to my next flower. Anything you want to do. Now, like I said, these are just to give you some ideas. Come up with your own. You do not have to use mine at all. I'm going to do another circle. Bigger. There is nothing you can do that's wrong on these because you can come up with any type of flower you want. And that's what's fun. Come up with your own designs. Okay, now I'm going to add some interest in there. Let's put some loops to make that flower interesting. Now when I come to my stem here, I like to just kind of ignore that that stem is there and keep on with my flower picture. It's up to however you want to do it. Now this one you can see ran into it, so I'm going to put that flower behind. So I'm actually going to make part of it look like it's going behind this other flower. Okay, so that's how I'm going to work that design out, and I'm just going to make this one kind of smaller. But see how it looks like it's going behind the other flower. So I'm going to do that for this one. This is a nice tall flower. We got a nice tall one here. I'm going to start with a circle way out here. I just love doing art during this time. It's fun to do different types of designs and come up with things that you want. All right, you guys can work on coming up with different things. I'm going to give you some time to create your own flowers and come up with some different things that you want, and then we're going to get back here and I'm going to show you some things that you can do with our markers. When you go off your paper, you can just make it as creative as you want. Let me finish this flower, and then we're going to talk about adding some color with your markers. Now, if you have watercolors, you can use watercolors if you want. I like to do this one with markers just because I have a lot of control with a marker. But you guys can do watercolors however you want to do. It's up to you. Right now, we're going to show you how to do markers. So I'm going to go ahead and take a minute, and then we're going to go and talk about the glue boxes here at the bottom, okay? One thing I do want to show you before I leave doing some of our flowers are some stems. If you want to do some stems on the edges or some leaves, this is what I like to do just so it doesn't get too crowded. I like to just do one bigger one, and then I'm going to divide the center of that leaf, and then maybe I'm going to put a few lines on just one side. Now, I'm not going to go and do another one on the other because it's going to get a little crowded. So I think I'm going to come up here and actually do one on this side. Then I'm going to do one on this side just to kind of even it up a little bit. And maybe not doing leaves on each. You can if you want. The little lines, you can do it on each if you want. And I'm going to go on through and just maybe add this one. I'm going to add a couple little ones. But I don't want it getting super crowded. What you don't want is to have like leaf, 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 leaf all the way up your stems. Then it starts to look a little bit busy. So you might skip if you've got an area where they're too close together. Just give it a little leaf and call it good. Move on. Your goal isn't necessarily to have too many leaves, but a few look good, okay? All right, let's add some lines on that one. Okay, let's go and talk about markers. Okay, we're back with some of our markers. In your little glue boxes, it should have created some shapes. Now, if some of your shapes didn't make two separate boxes, let me see, like this one, that's okay. You can decide whether you want it to be one shape or two separate ones. It's up to you when you go to color them. But what I like to do is I like to get my marker and I like to go right around my shape, okay? I don't have to go in on top of the glue. It actually doesn't look as good when you go on top of the glue. And I'm just gonna kind of do a little bit on it. I'm not gonna fill the whole thing in. You can, but I'm not gonna fill the whole thing in because you don't need to when you're doing watercolor. And I'm gonna skip a few. Come on down. I can put this top on it if I want. Okay, let's switch colors. What I want to try to avoid is getting the same color right next to the other color. So I don't want to put like another red right here. So I'm probably going to switch colors out and not do two of the colors exactly the same by each other. So let's try a purple. There's so many things you can do with the markers. I wonder how your glue marker transformation worked. I got a couple comments. Some people said their glue wasn't turning. That could have been because your marker might have been a little bit too dry. Maybe it didn't last in there long enough. You could have maybe needed a few more days. I don't know. I do have, my sister-in-law is trying it with food coloring. So she wants to hurry the process up a little bit, so she's going to use food coloring. That's great. You can try that. Let me know how that goes. Okay, now I've gone ahead and got these ready to go. Let me show you what happens. Let me just do a few yellows because it's so fun. I'm just going to put some yellow up there. Now I chose not to do yellow on yellow. So I missed an area that I didn't want to put it right on top of that. because I don't like it blending in. All right, here we go. This is one of my paintbrushes. It doesn't matter which paintbrush you use. You just don't want to have a brush that's way too fat. If you have a brush that's really wide, it's going to be difficult to try to color and paint with inside of some of your smaller circles. But I want you to be able to work with what you have. So I try to find one that is the smaller brushes. You can even go, you know, I've got a teeny tiny brush. Look how little that one is. Okay, that's a small brush, and believe it or not, I actually have one that's a lot smaller than that. I don't have it with me, but that one I use for doing really fine detail. I have a brush that actually has like 3 hairs in it, and that one I use for just the tiniest things, but you don't need that small. I'm just gonna go ahead and use that one. I kind of like the squared off ones too. Here we go. I've got water on my brush, and I'm going right on top. Look at that already. Do you see how that's blending? Filled it in, right? So I didn't have to fill that completely in when I was coloring it. And what is neat about these markers and markers in general and watercolors is you push the color around with your brush. So I can actually push and move color to where I want it to. Okay, now I've got my brush, as we call it, loaded. It's loaded up with some marker paint. I can actually, let's see if I can just go right up here. Let's skip. And yep, I can. I can actually paint right there without even using my marker, because I have my brush loaded, so to speak, with this one already, because I had a lot of paint on there from my marker. So you can do that as well. Well, I don't want blue right on top of blue. Let's put one here. Yep. Now the thing that I want to make sure that you do, as you've probably already learned in art classes before, make sure you rinse out your brush between each change of color. Okay, like I just rinsed it out, now I'm going to do purple. And I'm going to blend that. Now the reason I like to not color it in all the way is because that adds that natural highlight that kind of makes the boxes look shiny and alive. So that's why I don't like to necessarily color them all in nice and flat. You can, it's just a different look. Okay, so I like having that little bit lighter there. It's up to you how you want to do that. All right, friends, I'm going to give you time to go ahead and push your paint around. I'm going to go ahead and do mine, and we'll come right back with our boxes that are all filled in. All right? See you in a bit. Okay, friends, how did it go? Did your boxes turn out? Did you get them all colored in? I've got mine finished, and I really like the way that it turned out. I went ahead and used the marker, and then I used some where I didn't use any marker, and I just used my brush to get it to have that type of color. This is a different one that I did earlier, so the colors might be a little different. Let's look up here at our leaves. Okay, I went ahead and got some of the leaves colored, but I wanted to show you quickly a few things you can do with your leaves. Now, what I don't think looks as bright is if I color my whole thing in all solid. Okay, what I like to do to give it a little definition is the center stem I do with my darker green. Okay, and then you can follow these little ribs here with your darker green. Then I switch and I go with a lighter green. Now if you don't have a lighter green, use a yellow, okay, because it's going to blend together anyway, right? So I'm going to put a little bit of yellow in there. I don't have to fill it all the way in because, as you know, it's going to blend. Okay, that's going to help me make it look like lighter and darker. Let's take a look at this one. I'm going to do the whole side there dark. And then I'm going to do just a little bit on this side. Let's take a look at what those look like now. Let's get a little bit of water on there. Blend it in. Yep. So now it kind of actually gives it that light green, doesn't it? Because that yellow blends together and makes that look good. Now I have a paper towel right next to me that I'm using to dab my brush off, because if it gets too watery, if I've put too much water on my brush, it's gonna what we call is bleed outside the edges, and you don't want it to get really messy out there. Okay, so that's why I keep dabbing my brush off. And now I'm gonna go on top of that one just a little bit. It blends that in together. And you can do that with the rest of your leaves. All right, great way to do the leaves. I'll let you guys work on those. Let's talk about our flower tops. Lots of colors we can do here. I love, as you guys know, I love purple, so I'm gonna make sure that I use some purple. But again, I do not have to color the whole thing. Okay, I'm just gonna color some areas. And then we'll come back and I'll show you guys what it looks like here in a minute. All right, let's try a little bit of water in here and see what we get. I don't have all my flowers completed, but I want to get this started so we can see what some water looks like. All right, friends, this is what we're looking at so far. As you can see, it ends up blending together. You can do a nice blending through any of your colors. If you want to, you can mix your colors together. Like some of the ones that I did, I went ahead and just made this blend all the way through and mixed my colors together. You can do that too. There's so many things that you can do with the watercolors or the markers. What I wanted to do is show you one more thing. If you joined us for our class on Tuesday, it was our class that we worked with our optical illusion tubes. There's something that you can do with this too using your markers. If you go ahead and make these tubes instead of using your Sharpies like we used, if you change out and use your markers that are water-based, you can actually do this with it as well. So I did that right here and I just started to blend mine together, and I really like the way that they turned out. So that's something that you can do too. If you have not seen that video, you can go back, take a look at it, and I'll show you how to make these tubes. And then when you go in to paint or to color them, use your marker and you can actually blend them together just like we talked about today. And I think it makes a really neat watercolor type of effect on blending them together, and how it really makes your colors go. And I like the way that that works that way. So you guys feel free to work that if you want to try that. That video is on my Tuesday episode 2. So that wraps up this project. I hope that you guys can continue to work on getting the rest of your flowers done. I know it takes a little bit of time, and that's okay because we've got time right now during this season of distancing. I did record this video in March of 2020, so if you guys are watching this in the future, congratulations for making it through. The rest of us are taking it day by day and enjoying the art and the little things in the meantime. You guys, thank you for joining me. I'm going to go back to working on creating some more stories because my normal channel is Storytime, and I love reading stories to you guys. So continue to follow me on there. Thank you so much for joining me, and keep in touch.